We are all gathered here today to drag
Yes, to
carceral
do a
Keisha.
peaceful protest with the local Atlanta police.
Say that again. You already know what time it is.
I got tons of soul on my true collectible. Famous, so famous, number one desirable. I do what I want when I want and how I want it. Leave you with the one in the air, that's how I roll. So royal, this is me, I'm so royal.
That is not our intro.
Oh yeah, I got something that says like I don't know the words.
You're not going to get
I get excited. It's so we don't know. It's just good, and we just
It's just good.
Hey, how y'all doing? Excited to be
go with what
here.
they give you.
So, welcome to another exciting episode of In the Middle. Yay! Come on, you better sip your tea. This is like a magic like cauldron that you drinking out of, Tage. What's
Well,
that?
you know, it's just a shoplifted cup from Starbucks. One of my comrades in Atlanta who rated that one across from the CNN Center. I just feel like, you know, homage and resistance at all times.
I love
Absolutely.
it. It's beautiful.
Thank you.
So a lot has been going on. We have been on break. The girls have been working. Deshaun is a full-time everything, okay? Booked and busy. Tasia has graduated from college. Yes. And I got my hair done. So, I mean, it's just another... I'm just so excited to see y'all. I miss y'all so much. I'm glad that we are back figuring out like how to do this in the middle stuff in the midst of like this pandemic, like, and everything else that is going on.
This pandemic is truly the ghetto. Actually, you know what? I won't even disrespect the ghetto in that way and name the.
So is it a gentrified ghetto?
It is. It's giving me very hipster because everyone wants to be innovative and a new normal and a new way of doing things. And I'm like, This is terrifying, and people are dying.
Oh my gosh. So a lot has been going on. We're not going to this is going to be a conversation mainly on the protests and stuff that's been going on in Atlanta. I was watching the news and I saw y'all favorite girl, Keisha Lance Bottoms, and she had this to say.
The legacy of Martin Luther King Jr. and the civil rights movement. You're not protesting anything running out with brown liquor in your hands, breaking windows in this city. T.I. and Killer Mike own half the West Side. So when you burn down this city, you're burning down our community. If you want change in America, go and register to vote.
I just can't believe she really said this shit.
I absolutely can believe she said that shit because Keisha gone Keisha. And carceral Keisha has always done what we expect her to do. It is with a K. Carceral Keisha.
So honestly, when I saw it, I've never been like that disgusted by like her, but I've always heard you all talk about her. Like my only gripe with Keisha, I did support the stuff that y'all said about. Like I didn't I believed it, but just seeing it was a different thing. Like my thing was, girl, you can't make macaroni and cheese. Stop posting pictures of food. But when I saw her get on there and say, you know, y'all run around on the brown liquor, it was like a scolding of black folks in front of white folks. And when you got on Twitter, all you saw was white people share that. When you got on social media, all you saw was white people take that and say, see, this is like CNN was running it, MSNBC was running it, Fox News. They took that and they just ran with it. And I was just like, this ain't it, girl. Like,
and I'm glad you brought that point up because to foreground all of our conversation, I think it's important that everybody realizes the media power that Atlanta has and the government of Atlanta has over the media. People, I mean, as you see from the protests, obviously CNN is located here, but Turner's here, Cox is here, and they really control the narrative. Like it's ridiculous. One of the biggest fights that comes out of all of this movement work is the constant battle of us, the people doing the work, the people out in the streets and the people experiencing the harm that we're claiming, to control the narrative because they just know how to spin it. And I think she stuck her foot in her mouth coming out making those types of anti-Black comments, but she's supposed to be the face of the Black Mecca in front of the world. I think people perceived it not in the same way that she thought that she was giving it, because she thought she was going to come out here and play everybody's Black mama or auntie and wave her finger and scold us, and then we were going to stop. What she did was she lit another fire.
Right. Well, Keisha does this thing. Ooh, Keisha does this thing where she can't make a commentary on things like this without bringing up the fact that she's a Black mother and that she has Black boys. And it's like, baby girl, that's all the more reason for why you should understand why what the fuck you're doing is coonery. And the fact that you don't understand that is exactly why I have questions about what those kids are going through, because I don't know what you're teaching them.
Yeah.
And I don't know what the fuck those kids are learning if you're telling them that, for one, that they get to be used as political pawns, and your reason for why you get to shut down the city and shut down black folks' feelings around like what we're experiencing. But also, I don't know what you're teaching them if you are allocating more funds to the police, allowing more police to be put in the city, putting up curfews that are inherently anti-Black and that will further police Black folks on the ground, right? Like, I don't know what you're teaching them when this is what you're doing as mayor and what you were doing as a city council member. So, like, she does this thing where she has to use her Black kids and use the many Black folks, Black organizers who came through Atlanta, and it's like, you don't really, I hate it more when Black folks do this because we should know better. You don't get to use our foreparents, our foremothers, forefathers, our elders as pawns, especially when it's the antithesis to what they actually stood for.
Absolutely.
And it angers me because it's like, girl, folks are out here every day. We have been out organizing. I haven't been on the ground, but folks have been out on the ground, and I've been organizing digitally for the last 4 days, nonstop
around the clock.
Around the clock. Like,
I know I haven't gone to sleep after 3 a.m.
Like, folks are being arrested every second of the day. Folks are being tear gassed. Folks have been shot by rubber bullets. Like, people are dealing with the very, very, very inherently anti-Black state right now in more direct ways than maybe they would be before. And this is your response, right? And her entire mayoral tenure has been about the Black celebrity, protecting her Black image to make what she says credible. And it really angers me to no end because those Black celebs, those Black politicians, those Black civil rights leaders, and Keisha Lance Bottom's Black ass are not doing anything but standing on the side of white supremacists and the state and locking our asses the fuck up and making us experience more harm.
Because that's the Atlanta way.
Right.
I mean, Keisha got elected based off of the narrative of the Black celebrity, her Black motherhood trope. Her whole campaign was, I want a better, more equitable, Black-friendly Atlanta for my kids to inherit. This is why we need to disrupt inheritance, but that's another rant for another day. The way that Black celebrities, namely T.I. and Killer Mike, came out in droves to support and to rally all of us who were, at the time, voters who were engaged in the hot button moment that the 2017 mayoral election was, her whole claim to the head of Atlanta is this likeness, right? Even the mayor, the terrorist mayor that came before her, Kasim Reed, who we also cannot stand, her having his direct endorsement because he was the darling of the Atlanta entertainment community because he was an entertainment lawyer before he was the mayor and a politician. So it's like this cycle, this machine of Black cultural production, Black authenticity, all the things that people fall in love about Atlanta, the outcastness of Atlanta. Is what goes on the shiny packaging that Atlanta then, packages up and ships out to the rest of the world and says invest. Yeah. So the idea that we have what, back in the day when this Atlanta way was first conceived of, you know, they called it positive race relations, right? So right after slavery, like Atlanta became Atlanta because it says, oh, we don't have the same racial issues that they have in Birmingham and Memphis and other Black Southern cities. Like Atlanta's different. See, like our Black business elite get along with our white business elite, and then we make a bunch of money. But it's always been on the back of the Black folks that have stayed in the hierarchy of the slave class. It's always been on those backs. And that's who you see out here at a bigger, more acute risk when she basically rolls out martial law on the people of the city. Because
Literally.
the Black folks that are out there, the organizers and, you know, the higher class non-native Atlantans are a small population in comparison to the number of Black youth and Black elders who are born and raised in this city, who are sick of it, who are out there. And I think for her to militarize the police in such a manner that there are tanks and tear gas and just police everywhere. We had a curfew that was instituted after the curfew time. So the curfew was at 9 p.m. and the people didn't know until after. You put those lives in danger.
9:15. I think my phone went off at 9:15.
Our state.
I didn't hear about it like just because I was on probably like some news station or something. I saw that it was like coming, but it was like 6, 7 o'clock.
Yeah.
I heard it prior to, but that's only because I have like the news app that comes directly to my phone.
Yeah.
And I have that because I'm a fucking organizer.
Yeah.
But a lot of folks are not having news apps send them notifications on their phone, and Keisha did not tweet that out. So
it was very abrupt, and
it was.
I kind of like was studying on like on a military type of thing. Like you put this out, you put this curfew, so it's saying like, girl, if we catch you out, it's on you. Like the folks, if you don't want to be tied up in this mess, you might want to be at the house. And it was kind of even explaining to some of my friends, they really couldn't even connect with it. I was telling my friend, like, he was trying to go to Goodfellas. You know, Goodfellas is, I think, on
North Avenue.
Yeah. And he was like, I'm going to go. I said, sis, you do not want to go there right now. Like, and like downtown Atlanta is blocked off. I live by the interstate. So I'm hearing, like when you was talking about them paddy wagons and those, I was on the phone with you, Tasia, like I was steady hearing police cars just go, and they were blocking off interstates. And like, I was just like, oh my gosh, like this is some real stuff. And I was like backing up back to the news conference, because I felt like it wasn't even a news conference. I feel like it was something else. Like it was a scolding of Black political leaders talking down to Black folks. Like the brown liquor stuff was really, really unnecessary. Like it took it to another level for me. It's like, you don't even have to say that. Like, and you talk about some, oh, this is Martin Luther King when it wanted that you decimated his legacy. I'm just like, oh my gosh, like sis is really saying this on live TV, like live TV and CNN is running it. And then you had T.I. mention that this is our Wakanda. And I'm like, for who? And you got 2 APD officers that are now fired from their job for arrest for like using excessive force on 2 college students. Like, and everybody saw, like the news station just ran that live.
Not only were they college students, they were Black college students.
Black, come on, no Beyonce over here.
That also is the pipeline to this very structure that we talk about. We can't separate. I'm going to be the person on the conversation that just keeps foregrounding and like the way Atlanta works, because I feel like when you read about the cities, I'm an Atlanta studies scholar, like just that's a part of the stuff that I do. And it's like you read all of these books and you look at all of these scenarios, and the way that they just keep repeating themselves in the exact same way because the structure doesn't change, it's wild. It's wild to me. They deploy, you know, our Black college students as the future to inherit this Wakanda, because obviously the native born, you know, Black kids in the hood that actually create the trap and create the culture of the city that it eats off of, you know, they're not intended to inherit, right? If they get the chance to make it in the same ways that T.I. and Killer Mike did, you know, if they get their chance, then sure. But for the most part, this city has, when you talk about it being the Wakanda, it is the place where Black folks who are educated, who are of a certain class, who are historically light-skinned, because other than Kasim Reed, when have we had a dark-skinned mayor? And it's a racist, classist system that Atlanta keeps reproducing because it's successful for the bottom lines of not just the Black folks in the so-called Wakanda, but also of the white business elite who eat off of this tenfold. Every dollar that the Black folks with money put in, the white folks get 10 off of it.
Yeah.
So when you bring up the business elite, I immediately thought about when she said that Killer Mike and T.I. own half of, what did she say? The upper, was like the West Side, West End?
They own half of the West Side. And so if we burn that down, then it's like a direct disrespect to them.
Because they're Black, so we're burning down the wrong things.
Yeah.
And I'm in my mind, I'm thinking, first of all, how is it okay for two Black men to own a community? What does that mean?
That's the first red flag.
Yeah, that was very much like, this is not something to be proud of when this city has pushed so many folks out of Atlanta. Like, I've been here since 2015. I'm not a native, but I've seen a lot of stuff. Like, I stay, where I stay at Tasia, you know the map of job.
On the Upper West Side. You stay on the West Side, but you stay on the side that they've now rebranded as Buckhead South. But
it's not a lot of Black folks that live out here.
No.
It's not. Like, it's not. Deshaun, you was getting ready to say something?
Was I? No.
Oh, you was about to say something. You was about to touch the blocks.
Okay, make sure I pull my power. Pull my power.
The roots.
No, but I was just gonna say that I was just gonna agree with T around that, like, as far as Keisha goes, and was gonna talk a little bit more about how both of these pandemics, right, COVID and the motherfucking police, are like playing together right now. Just a few weeks ago, Keisha was on the news going against Brian Kemp, right? She was going against him, talking about all that he was doing was wrong, and why what he was doing was wrong, and how she cared about the Black community, how she cared about Atlanta, and how she knew that what he was doing was unsafe for us, blah, 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 blah. Now, that's not a decision that Keisha has made without his approval.
Yep.
It's not a decision that she has made around the policing of Atlanta without his approval. Now, everything that he does, everything that he's doing is justifiable. It's okay. It's just. It's supposed to happen because she has, again, her Black children, and she has the protection of and the credibility of Black celebrities, right? And for me, it's like watching this woman, this AKA this HBCU grad, this
Delta.
Oh, she's the Delta. See how to the AKA, and it's no, well, it is a little bit of shade to the AKAs, but
I'll eat them up in the comments.
They're gonna eat me up as they should, but I love a Delta, and I will say
and a lot of Deltas love Keisha
what she does is very much antithetical to what the Deltas that I know do.
Mm-hmm.
Come on.
No tea, no shade.
A light-skinned Delta, that's interesting.
Oh, the dynamics in Atlanta be different, even though she graduated from FAMU, but it'd be different. But yeah, so that like this woman who's part of the BGLOs, who's HBCU grad, who has Black children, all these things, like she's using, and I wrote about this almost over 3 years ago, wherein I talk about how the establishment will use Black people as a way to diminish our experiences, to say that, well, you know, if these Black elite will stand and talk about racism, but will say that what's happening down here with the poors, with the proletariat, with the niggas, what's happening over here, if they saying that y'all doing it wrong, then it must be wrong, and therefore what we do to y'all is justified because this is not white supremacy. This is you're wrong and this is right, right? And they play into that. Like the Black elites play into that because that's what they thrive off of. That's how they make their living. I was just talking about this earlier when I saw that Jay-Z released a response after speaking to the mayor of Minneapolis.
Not you.
But it's like, I'm so disappointed in Jay-Z, and I recognize that he's a billionaire, all these things, I know that. But it's like, when I was coming up, Jay-Z was, and I mean, if I'm being honest, he still is my favorite rapper.
Mm-hmm.
And he was my favorite rapper because, well, him amongst T.I. and Lil Wayne, who all have, and Ludacris, who all have recently said some really ridiculous things. So that's why you just don't, child. But anyways, but Jay-Z was one of my favorite rappers and remains that. But the reason for why he was one of my favorite rappers is because what he spoke to was an actual struggle, right? One that he was not too far removed from, one that he was not like too separated from, one that he was in a lot of ways still experiencing when I was growing up, right? Now, like watching this man, this billionaire, think that he is still this Jay-Z that came up from selling dope on the streets, that came up having to motherfucking assault his brother, that came up having to, you know, be jailed, all these things, like thinking that he's still that Jay-Z while operating with the establishment is hard to witness. And in that same way, it's happening with our Black Atlantans, with our Black celebs here, with our Black wannabe billionaires, T.I., motherfucking Killer Mike. Like, Killer Mike and T.I. can stand behind Bernie Sanders. They can go to protests that they shouldn't be at. They can go and be on the side of Hillary Clinton and stand behind Keisha Lance Bottoms and stand behind Kasim Reed. But when it comes to actual Black struggle, they don't want to be a part of it because they cannot be a part of it because so much of what they are actually, so much of who they actually are is so far removed from the Black struggle. But they can't admit that because they are really in the middle of a fucking identity crisis, continuously on a loop. And that's what Jay-Z is exhibiting. That's what T.I. is exhibiting. That's what Killer Mike is exhibiting. And that's what Keisha Lance Bottoms is exhibiting. And no matter how much she doesn't want to admit that, that's why she gets to be the mayor. And that's why she gets to bring out over 1,500 National Guard troops into our city on top of state troops, on top of APD.
And Georgia Tech police, and the World Congress Center police, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera.
They just deployed motherfucking Homeland Security yesterday.
They had the Georgia State Patrol, the Interstate Highway Police,
like
3 cars deep, because I live off of a main thoroughfare that's a one-way road in Atlanta, and they're just rolling 4 lanes wide, straight down one of the main streets in the city, going after the protesters. The other night, you literally saw, I don't know, about 40 protesters, and you could clearly tell that whoever was marshaling had left them behind, or I don't know if when the curfew rolled out, folks was just like, fuck it. But you literally saw like 40 of them go running down the street, and then you saw like cop cars right behind them. You saw police on bicycles biking on the sidewalk, which is against the law, but who cares about the law at this point, right? They're biking on the sidewalk, grabbing people. And I'm gonna go back to the interview in a second, but what I want to point back out about that curfew that was fucked up is that we know that Georgia caught all this flack for reopening the state early. So our state's open. People are at work. It's not just like essential services and maybe a couple dine-in restaurants. No. People in Atlanta are at work. And I tweeted this out. I was like, so let me get this straight. You as the mayor, even if I was, let's say that I was okay with police, yada, yada, yada. Just thinking from a public administration standpoint. If I know that the city's open, if I know that an uprising is happening, if I know that there are folks that have been at work all day that need to get home because 9 o'clock on a weekend for a service industry-based city like Atlanta is not late. So I know for a fact there were folks that were trying to get home from work.
The MARTA still runs at 9 usually.
Yes, because MARTA runs until typically 2 a.m. That's the point I'm getting at. They shut down MARTA at 9 abruptly. They had police blocking main roads. So if you went to work somewhere in downtown, midtown, or Buckhead on Friday night, Saturday night, Sunday night, you probably got rounded up minding your business, trying to get home from work.
Businesses didn't even know it. Like the businesses.
Yeah, they didn't. They didn't let them know. They did not say, hey, we're going to institute a shutdown even 30. They didn't even call them at 8:30 at night and say, you might want to close your restaurant and send your people home because in 30 minutes.
We know a lot of those businesses, especially downtown, like running. And a lot of Black folks work downtown in the city and stuff, doing those little jobs that go like into the night. So it's just.
And even contrary to that, forget that. I live in a neighborhood where half my neighbors are houseless. They sleep on the sidewalk. Now, if I have been subject to the violence that has already been instituted by Keisha this entire pandemic, you know, seeing my park where I sleep fenced up, seeing my encampment destroyed, seeing my paperwork thrown in the trash and burned by pigs because of shelter in place, and any other, you know, state sanctioned law that they use to code their violence as okay. If that's been happening to me, and then I see a all-out police war on the people pop off and I have nowhere to go because I have no shelter, imagine what the fuck they going through.
Yeah.
Nobody's safety or well-being went into that plan because she was so pissed that how dare we burn the capital that she has accumulated. How dare we go up there and destroy all of the things that 6 or 7 consecutive Black mayors have colluded with white capitalist business elite to make happen. How dare we burn that down? It's not the couple of properties that T.I. and Killer Mike own on the West Side. And if she want to say that so loudly with her chest, if 2 niggas own half the West Side, why the fuck are Black people being displaced like that? Why hasn't that land been redeveloped? Because they're sitting on it, speculating, waiting for it to acquire, you know, even more value so that they can put something more profitable on it. Because as Killer Mike has said from his own chest, loudly, he is a capitalist. He says he's a compassionate capitalist, which we know that can never exist. He says he's a compassionate capitalist, and he said it on the opening of an episode of T.I.'s podcast that he did. They had a whole
I remember that.
2.5-hour conversation about capitalism and misogyny.
Yep.
And if you continue to think that Killer Mike or T.I. make revolutionary political music, wow.
What a moment. What reminds me.
Oh no! I was just saying, wow, what a moment. I was thinking about a lot of people were praising the police chief because she was like, you know, I believe you're upset, but then her message came out and she was, y'all caught me off guard.
I can't stand Erica.
I can't.
Yeah, like praising Erica on social media for a minute.
You talk about our woman chief of police, our lesbian LGBTQ chief of police.
A motherfucking white woman.
First of all, happy Pride Month, but Atlanta is not a city that believes that no police should be at Pride because they hired a queer woman to lead the police force, and then our entire public safety LGBTQ equity initiative is dripping with collusion between the queer community and the police. Why? Because we like to protect queer-friendly businesses and queer-friendly neighborhoods so that they stay profitable, not the lives of the Black, queer, and trans women and trans folks that continue to be murdered in droves in the city.
So we can't even get adequate funding for the people who are living with HIV. That has been a discussion for a while. Like the money that has been withheld, organizations that were not getting funding that had to shut down. Like, how do you say you care, but then your actions are not showing that? It's not clicking to me. So I'm just going to end on that part about Erica is that people were praising her. And then she came back and she said, y'all really caught me off guard. Like, it's funny watching it because they were embarrassed. They were embarrassed that so many folks came together and just did the fucking thing. And it's like, y'all have no control. Like, Keisha was embarrassed and Brian Kemp was fucking embarrassed. And it was just like everybody hyping up and they were just so fucking angry at how fucking dare you all embarrassed. Like, and I just cannot believe, like, it's hard for me to wrestle like what has been going on the last 3 or 4 days. Like, even though I know it was coming, but it's just like seeing the shit. It's like a different type of fucking experience for me.
It is a lot, and it's a lot to be navigating. I was going to say 2 things. The first thing I'll say is that it's a lot because like I have been telling people, don't ask me how I'm doing. Don't ask me how I'm doing, don't ask me how I'm feeling, because I'm tired of answering that question because the answer is consistent. Either I don't know or I'm not well, right? And like the fact that we are not even able to interact with each other with in a regular way, right? In a way that is endearing because of what we're experiencing in the world should say one thing. But also somebody was asking me like, well, like, why are you overwhelmed? And I was telling them like, well, I work 2 jobs, and one of my jobs is organizing, and I'm organizing outside of the organizing, and I'm doing this, that, and the third, and I'm on top of this, that, and the third, and I'm being a resource to these people, that people, those people, those people, and I'm having to respond to all these folks because I also have a platform online, and I'm blah, 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 blah. Like, and they're like, I wish that wasn't the case. Like, you should be able to take time to sit with what you're feeling right now. And it made me realize I don't know what I feel, right? I don't know what I feel because I'm working through being triggered. I'm working through being bothered. I'm working through being hurt. I'm working through being all these things. And I don't have the space to be to myself. And the reason for why is not because of the work that I'm doing alone, but because we have leadership that doesn't care enough about Black folks to allow us to mourn. So much so that we have to respond by organizing continuously, because if we don't, they will run over us and run through us and nothing else will happen, right? And that brings me to what I want to say secondly, which was that Keisha reminds me so much of, how your Black mama sends you out to an event and she says, don't embarrass me now. Like, don't embarrass me.
Yes.
And
what would I be going to the store?
Right. And then you embarrass her. You showed your ass, you showed out, and she scolds you. When you get home, you know it's an ass whipping. You know it's a problem because you really embarrassed her in front of all these white folks, in front of all these folks who are upstanding, who we have to impress, we have to act right for, right?
They have made something.
Keisha is that person, except the difference between our parents, our mothers, and her is that she is backed by a state that wants to abuse us consistently and that only needs her face and her skin complexion to allow it to happen and justify it. Because if this Black woman is allowing herself to be embarrassed, whether she names it or not, and allows us to harm, abuse, beat, kill these niggas in the street, then we can do that because we got her permission. And it's like, that's exactly who she is in this moment. She's the embarrassed Black mom who I don't give any leniency, because whereas my mom was working through a system of anti-Blackness and internalized anti-Blackness and didn't know that respectability politics wasn't something we should aspire to, or that we should work through our own anti-Blackness to take better care of each other, Keisha Lance Bottoms doesn't have that room to make those mistakes because she is in charge of an entire city that's being influenced by the entire state, right? And that's her problem.
And that's why, and I'm glad, Deshaun, you made that point, because what I always ground people in when they ask me questions about what's going on in Atlanta or a city, I have to ground people in the very definition of what a city is.
Right.
A city is a physical accumulated space of where capital is accumulated. That's all it is. Everything about a city. I went to school for urban studies and urban planning. It's one of the very fundamental things that they teach you about how a city is planned. They put a city on a street grid. Why? Because in Paris, when they had the uprisings, when they had one of their first 2 or 3 revolutions, the people barricaded the streets. Now we have wider streets to help not only capital flow, but police flow.
Oh, yeah.
And if you have been in the downtown or midtown core, Atlanta's most planned along a grid section of the city, all you saw was how these one-way streets send police down one way, police down another way. How they knew which ones to barricade, to block off, so that you can capture people. When you talk about sitting here feeling triggered, because I have been in these streets for years, this is the first major protest or minor protest that I've really been aware of in Atlanta that I've not been at, and I've been organizing digitally. But to sit here and look outside and realize I live in the center, that means I can be enclosed on. That means they really don't care, because they are blocking the garage for my car to get out. My parents called me and were like, maybe you should come home. I'm Black. I can't be out especially after a curfew, trying to drive to safety. There is no safety for me in a city, in a place that exists to accumulate capital and to protect it. That's literally what a city is for. And so when you talk about a mayor, in the same way that I say it's not who is president, it is the very office of the United States president that needs to go. It is the same for mayor, and it is the same for governor. Positions of power that presides over what we perceive to be a community only are there to facilitate capital flows. If they take care of the labor force, it's because the labor force goes into the capitalist system. That's all it's there for. So in my mind, why would I expect her to care about my life, especially my Black life, my Black space, my Black community, if her interest, just from the inherent role that she plays and allows herself to be in, will always act in the interest of capital first, maybe people second, and it ain't gonna be niggas who's in the maybe.
Right.
What do you all like currently right now we're in a curfew. We can hear I'm sure there was police sirens and where you are at, Tasia.
It's been nonstop for the last about hour.
For those who saw this, I saw it coming, but I didn't see it in this. Like I felt like the fire was burning. It's always been burning, but I feel like the pandemic turned the heat up a little bit.
Absolutely did.
Like you have people who have not been able to go back to work, people who have not been able to access unemployment, people who job is open back up, but they're not eligible for unemployment because they're not getting the hours. You're seeing folks who were quote unquote essential workers that were working at these jobs, not even getting paid adequate pay to be able to deal with the things that's going on. Some of them had got Kroger overpaid some of their employees and asked for the money back.
We're back.
Like,
girl.
No, you are a $1 billion institution.
And has made plenty of money, because I don't know if you've paid attention. Groceries have went up.
Yes, baby.
They have went up. Like, I think eggs have went up like 8% and milk has went up. Like, girl, we was fighting over tissue.
Right.
People were hoarding tissue. Like, there's been a lot going on. Like, people who were already suffering before this are even more removed now. And I don't think people realize that. I think some folks believe that, because I'm seeing a lot of conversations on social media now, and people are not understanding why your Gucci store is being torn down, why folks are tearing these quote unquote Black businesses, these luxury Black businesses that, do y'all really want?
They pay rent, first of all. That's my caveat on that one. When you talk about a Black owned business, sure, the enterprise is owned by a Black person.
Come on.
That Black person pays rent to who? Who owns these buildings? Right. One. And then two, when you talk about hardship and displacement and all of the things that make a person or a household vulnerable, they also make small businesses vulnerable. There's a reason why when the COVID relief stuff that rolled out in Atlanta happened, one of the first few people who got bailed out were small business owners in this city. And I would have a heart for them, but the fact of the matter is the regime of gentrification in Atlanta that has displaced Blackness for the last 20 plus years, because this isn't something new. It's been happening since the 80s. So for the last 20 or 30 years, a lot of these new businesses that have moved into Atlanta and replaced the old businesses are owned by white folks, are owned by folks that aren't even from here, are from transplants. They are not the people who are from here, because the people who are from here are pissed off, starving and pouring and burning it down. That's what. So what is the logic?
And when you talk about gentrification, I think the average apartment in Atlanta is, well, one bedroom is like $1,400.
Yep, $1,450 now. And 5 years ago, for an efficiency one bedroom apartment, it was $825.
Yes. When I first moved here in 2015, me and my friend had a 2-bedroom. It was like $1,500.
Yep.
Now,
when I first moved to Atlanta, and I moved to East Atlanta, I moved to Zone 6, and I miss being in Zone 6.
Yes.
But but when I first moved there, I had a 3-bedroom. Yes, 3 bedrooms, and we were paying $750 or $800 for rent.
Mm-hmm.
Altogether.
For rent altogether.
Wow.
The two or 3 years following that, it went up to $1,000. Right.
$300?
Yeah. On average, I mean, the place that I live in now, you know how they do the renew your lease, and they're like, if you renew by this date, you can keep your same rate. And so my same rate was, substantially low. And then they were like, now if you wait, you get a half increase to this much, which was still pretty reasonable. And then the full legit like increase for what they're selling to new people is like $500 more than what I pay, because the rate that I pay is frozen at 2 or 3 leases ago because I've been in this unit for a while. So yeah.
Wow. So
It happens fast.
Yeah. So I was like the perfect storm came together for this. And I'm paying attention to George Floyd. His brother was on the news and he was asking for peace. And I get it. But this is not necessarily about George Floyd. Like, I feel like that scene that definitely drove it, but George Floyd is not the only person who has been killed in the hands of police. He's not the only Black person who's been killed. I can't think off the top of my head. Like, you have a Black trans man that was killed in Tallahassee, Florida.
Tony McDade.
No one's talking about this.
Except
I'm not seeing that much. Deshaun Reed talked about it a little bit. The one who died was murdered on Facebook Live.
Yeah.
Like,
Brianna.
I think the first, and I like paying attention to all this made me go back into the history of Memphis. And there was this trans woman who was killed on video back in 2008, DeWanna Johnson.
Yeah.
She was killed back in 2008, and she was killed 10 months after she was supposed to be suing the police department. Like, she died not too far from where I grew up at. So, like, this is not just like a one person thing. It's not a one Black man thing.
No.
It's the tearing down the whole system. And I've been trying to explain that to people because I've been seeing a lot of my folks say, what is this going to solve? The people that's out here breaking into the Gucci stores or tearing this stuff up in Buckhead and Target, they're not doing this in memory for George Floyd. I said, yeah, they might not know it, like be able to describe it, but they are doing it. Like, they don't have to describe like, hey sis, I'm out here doing this for George. I know you are.
Yep. Because
you're interested in you're seeing the inequalities, like you're interested in tearing the shit down and doing what the fuck you got to do. And like, it's hard for me to just sit there and listen to some folks saying this is not going to serve anything, because I'm literally thinking, how is it okay for you to come out your mouth and say that we should vote to find somebody to tell police to stop killing us?
I just want to talk about that note, because the way that I have framed all of the incidents for the last week, because I understand that while Atlanta started Thursday, Friday, it popped off elsewhere day of.
Mm-hmm.
This is a big response to the countless numbers of times that these cities have had the opportunity to get it right and have elected to do everything but what has been laid out for them. I don't know how this goes down in every city intimately, but I know how it went down here. Deshaun was my comrade in them streets between 2015 and now, right? 2016 being the peak. We all started around Ferguson, 2014 time, however you plugged in. We have given the city of Atlanta countless reports and demands and policy recommendations. The people have written literal legislation, wrote it out, did the research, the findings, talked to their community, some of them got it funded, had little short-term jobs off of it, right? Because, we got on this sort of rat wheel, right, where we're like, oh, give me another issue, and then we'll go and we'll turn it out, we'll give it back to you, and hopefully we'll see change. It makes you feel empowered. It makes you feel like I'm being the change that I'd like to see. I'm engaged civilly. I go to the state capitol. I go to Atlanta City Hall. I went to grad school. I was in my master's program for 3 years in public policy and urban studies. I spent more time at Atlanta City Hall, the Georgia State Capitol, in one-on-one meetings with council people, at MPU meetings, and all of these modes and methods of engagement. And I voted. I voted for mayor, for president, and for governor. Voted for Stacey Abrams, voted for Vincent Fort for mayor of Atlanta because he is aligned, you know, at the time with a lot of socialist values, and he's taking a rest in the streets with the people. And then I sat there and I didn't vote for president. I wrote that in, but whatever, I participated. And to look at what all of that has gotten us, right? We've done the work for you. Gentrification, we've told you about it. We told you how to fix it. Affordable housing, healthcare access, homelessness, LGBTQ rights and issues. You know, we've done it. We've begged, we've pleaded, we've done it. I swear, you name an issue, we've done it. I know shit that I will never use, and I know shit that I use every day, right? I very well could run a city. Don't want to because I know what being mayor means, right? We've done the work. And for you to sit there and tell us that our righteous rage and anger that has been exacerbated by a global pandemic, where you continue to show us that you don't care and we continue to do your work for you, that we shouldn't be out here tearing down the very things that continue to feed our suffering. Yeah, no, them fighting words. I want to fight now talking about it. So I feel like if I was in the street with something flammable, something might get lit up, because that's how I feel thinking that. Because all of those experiences, while I gained so much and my resume is cute, that took so much from me. Yeah. And it took so much from the elders in this work who raised me. They don't have rosy qualities of life because they are poor and Black anyway, and then they hold this work. So if that Black elder wants to burn down something on that corner, I feel like they have the right to. If that Black young person in this city that has the largest, not only income and wealth inequality gap in the country consistently, but also the largest income immobility gap, which means if you are born poor in the city of Atlanta, you are more likely than any other major city in the US to stay poor your entire life. So this myth of the Black Mecca, this myth that everybody can be TI, this myth that you too can grow up and own half of the West Side and speculate and flip it and be a million gajillion billionaire, it's a myth. And the people that are out there in the streets are showing you why that shit's not real, and they're here to end it. They're here to disrupt it, and we're here to imagine better because of their efforts.
So when the voting thing, I think a lot of people, Deshaun, I think you talked about this a lot on Twitter, or may have a retweet. You've been saying a lot. You have been sounding off. I definitely appreciate the information that we're even giving to protesters and saying, hey, if you're gonna be out, you need to be prepared. This might be an all-day thing. Like, grab your stuff. That was some good information. I'm thinking about how people, I don't want to drive to here, but I want some folks to pay attention, because I feel like some folks might be watching and don't get it. Like, why now? Like, why not vote? Why is voting not a thing? I think some people seem to forget that this happened when we had a Democratic Black president. We had a Black attorney general. We had all of these things that you say to put in, and yet Black folks were still being killed in the hands of police. And
this Black president that also rolled out, what is it, the 21st century policing reform, sweeping legislation that organizers and activists across the country back between 2015 and 2016, little 2017, if you were engaged in the afterwork, not just the uprising, but the afterwork, we were basically forced to put those tenets on our recommendations and our demands. At least adopt the Obama thing, right? Because it was supposed to move policing beyond what we see today. Here we are, you put the policy in place, we've had 5 years to evaluate, and there's helicopters outside and police running over people just outside right now.
I mean, we were asking for body cams. The body cams were supposed to say.
They don't turn those on, and when they do, it just subjects us all to shit that we don't.
I mean, they can be on, and then the medical examiner can be saying, well, he didn't technically die in the hands of police. He already had pre-existing
conditions. Yeah, this pre-existing condition was he was Black.
There are so many places we can move this to. Deshaun, I'm going to let you take it from there.
I just, I'm already in the middle of writing a book. And in that book, I'm talking, there is one chapter wherein I'm detailing the interconnectedness of anti-fatness, anti-blackness, and police brutality.
Mm-hmm.
Mm.
Mm-hmm.
Volume up.
As you should.
And I'm calling for folks to walk with me back to 2014, to the beginning of what started this movement. For a lot of folks was out in the street for Oscar Grant 2010, folks out in the streets for Trayvon Martin 2012. But what was the catalyst for this moment was 2014 Ferguson. Mike Brown was murdered. News reported him as beast-like, as large, as a gorilla, right? Like, these were headlines and terms used for Mike Brown, who was my size, my age, and my height, right? A couple years later, we get Walter Scott.
Mm-hmm.
He's running away. He was unarmed, but media said the same things about him. Then we get Samuel DuBose, we get Eric Garner, we get Alton Sterling, we get all these people, majority of the folks that we saw on our TV screens that were murdered by police were fat, black, and poor, and mass presenting. And the folks that they always compared them, or the things that they always compared them to, were animals or something that makes them animalistic.
Yep.
And then you start getting autopsy reports, because in the beginning, like T said, we started organizing in 2014. My very first protest was in August 2014, right after Mike Brown was murdered. I've been organizing ever since.
Yep.
Autopsies in the beginning were things that people were leaning on, but were not things that were like talked about nearly as much until you get to Eric Garner. Mm-hmm. And that's when you start seeing that coroners are saying, oh, well, you know, this person has this pre-existing condition, or this person was obese, so therefore they were already going to die, or this person had high blood pressure and high cholesterol, and therefore they were already going to die, right? All these things. And so I was not surprised, but also very surprised when I saw the coroner's report for George Floyd, because George Floyd is not fat. However, he was big and tall. Mm-hmm. He's a larger black man. And so therefore, a lot of these same rules apply in different ways, right? And so this man, who is not fat but is larger, suddenly the video wherein we see a police officer's knee on his neck for 3 minutes, where he's saying continuously that he cannot breathe until he cannot say it anymore because he's no longer breathing. Suddenly that evidence no longer matters because his size is what murdered him, right? And so I'm watching this, and it's astounding to me that this is happening while I'm writing this book. I'm like, I'm in the middle of writing this chapter right now, and I have to go back and revise that shit because it's happening right here again in the middle of this shit happening, right? Like, and it's flabbergasting because, and it's a lot of things. It's a lot of things because I am the same size, the same complexion, sometimes darker, in the same predicament as the rest of these folks were, as the rest of these people were. And irrespective of my trans identity, when police see me out on the streets, they will murder my ass and then gender me as a man afterwards.
Yep.
And the only people who will say I wasn't were the folks who knew me enough to care, right? And so I'm watching this, and I'm angry for so many reasons, for all the same reasons as everyone else, but also angry for reasons that no one else is really angry for, because no one else is really naming that this type of violence is happening specifically to fat and larger Black folks and Black bodies in ways that is not happening to other people. And so to watch that not only be justified, and I tweeted this earlier, like, when I say abolition, I'm not talking about just police. I'm talking about courts, prosecutors, and judges too, because and coroners too, because what I'm watching is not only are police murdering us in the streets and saying this is why it's justified, the judge is saying I'm not going to push him through because it is justified. After the prosecutor says I'm not going to prosecute you because it is justified. After the coroner says I'm not going to say that they were murdered by this police officer because their body was already dying, right? And what does that mean for Black folks who are already dead? In so many ways, in a white supremacist society that says that we are already dead, we're born dead because we are Black, right? And so like, I'm watching all of this and seeing all of this and having to go back in and revise my book that was not supposed to be about anything after 2017, because here I am again having to witness this shit over and over again, because we will continue to witness this until this shit is abolished. And it's frustrating for me to watch because of how much that's happening and how little that seems to matter to everyone else. How much everyone who has a critical analysis, right, still is not being critical enough, because fatness is not something to be critical about.
Absolutely. Name it, LaShawn.
And it's like, and yet I am supposed to say fuck COVID, put on a mask, and go out in the streets and protest, knowing that not only do I have these pre-existing conditions that COVID can murder me from, but also that the police can murder me from and justify it. And no one will name that my fatness for the reason why, except for the niggas around me who know and love me, who have witnessed my ass out in the streets and not in the streets for these last 3 years. And so it's just like, I'm overwhelmed by that. Like, that shit comes rushing over me because it's continuous, it's everlasting, it's on a continued loop. Mm-hmm. Fat Black person after fat Black person. Breonna, even talking about Breonna Taylor, right? Like, and my book is specifically about Black trans folk, Black trans mass folks, Black AMAB, non-binary folks, and Black men. But even talking about Breonna Taylor, like, this is a fat Black woman who is not being discussed almost at all, because the catalyst for why we're in the streets is George Floyd, and everyone that came after him is an afterthought, a footnote. And that's for a lot of reasons, but for her in particular, it's also because of the fact that she's a fat Black woman, because she was murdered before him. But then it becomes about whose murder matters more, and whose body matters more. And the reality is that none of our bodies matter at all, but what does matter is the reason for why they say that our bodies were murdered. And that's always going to point back to our fatness, even though our fatness is not the reason for why we're murdered. And as such, in as much.
It's so far.
Yes, I knew it was coming. Open sesame.
But as such, right, like, we continue to have to play on this continued loop, because and T and I were talking about this last night on our meeting. The more these things happen, the more so-and-so for Black lives comes out of this. But every such and such for Black lives that comes out of these things are always talking about all the things that are marginalizing us, except for our fatness. That's never mentioned.
Our excessiveness, yep.
And it's like, George Floyd deserved to be here. That man did not deserve to die. I don't care what he did, who he did, where he did it. I don't give a fuck. He didn't deserve to die at the hands of police, especially in the way that he did. And his murder does not deserve to be covered up by blaming his size for the reason why, and his health, right? Because this is not only anti-fatness, it's also ableism, and his health for the reason why he did not live, when we saw the knee of that officer imprinted in his neck on camera for 3 minutes long, that led to his death.
With his hands in his pocket.
I think
his hands was in his pocket.
A blank face. He was staring in the camera and said nothing.
A lot of folks were bringing up that when you do that, even like police training, is that you're doing that to submit like the person, whatever. But at that point, they were already subdued. So why are you, if they were so like going to put you in danger, why are your hands in your pocket?
And there was 4 of them. And there was video evidence that showed prior to that he didn't resist arrest. He was arrested in handcuffs and was walking with them to the car. So what happened between that moment and the moment of him being on the ground that you said, oh, I'm going to murder you? And what happens is the officer knew him. Apparently, they were co-workers.
But they said they didn't know. They
Bouncers
said they
at the
didn't know
same-
each other, but they worked in the same place. They
Bouncers
didn't technically know each other, but they worked in the same place. So happened to work in the same place. But the person who owns the place or whatever said they didn't technically know each other, but they work in the same place. But I didn't know that he was originally arrested for a counterfeit $20 bill.
Yeah.
Like,
we've been murdered for less in our own
yeah, like
in our own cars. I mean, there is no safety for Black folks in this world, and that's why what's happening outside the window is what's happening.
Right.
I love the way that Deshaun laid that out, because what the work that you do around fatness and Blackness does, it goes beyond just educating folks, but it really makes us realize all these arguments that we make about worth and worthiness when it comes to Black folks, especially Black folks at the intersections that you work, like, there is no worthiness. We've seen this. We've experienced how many, unlawful or uncalled for deaths of Black folks in general, but especially over the last 2 months when the Ahmaud Arbery, incident leaked, which that's why I know a good bit of these people out here in Georgia are in these streets right now, because that shit's been stewing. You want to talk about how COVID put a pot, a top of a steaming pot? People didn't go out with Ahmaud Arbery like they wanted to because shelter in place was still a thing. Georgia opened up 4:30. All of this shit happened through May. Here we are, June 1st. We told you this was going to happen. When you talk about worth and worthiness and who gets to be discussed and who gets to be talked about, I am sick and tired. I don't know what I'm more tired of, the don't destroy your own communities and Black-owned businesses, or, we need to bring back Black Wall Street, that mess, or if I'm more upset with this person was this. They served in the military. They had a good job. They had a family. They never had priors. Nothing should justify the state taking your life. The necropolitics of this state is hinged on everything but all of the things that we are pointing to. And that's what we exist for, right? We're going to politically educate or just socially educate our people. We need to continue to bring these moments up, because we cannot have solidarity with our folks on the streets who are our soldiers, who are our army, who are our partners in revolutionary struggle. In order for us to get true abolition, this is the first step. This is going to continue. We owe folks infrastructure and we owe folks support. And what we do not owe them are these fucked up critiques that says, if somebody dies on the street corner right now, it'll be, well, they were protesters. So they were out there. And that's that on that. We as folks sitting by witnessing these things need to step back and think about how we discuss worth, and we put worth on people and places and spaces, and we go along with the violence of the state and say, well, maybe they did deserve to die, because no, they didn't. Nobody deserves this.
Right.
That's why I'm never interested in the they were prior service, they were a veteran, they were this and that. Like, that shit doesn't fucking matter. Me and my friend were literally pulled over in Timbuktu in Tennessee years ago. I was in full army uniform. Me and my friend, it was like 11 o'clock at night. We had just got through running some errands, doing some military work, doing some army work, like transporting folks back to the car from the bus, and driving through the middle of nowhere in Tennessee. We so happened to pass a truck that was driving a little bit slow in a no passing lane. Truck followed us for 10, 15 minutes. Come to find out, the person in the truck was an off-duty officer, called his friend, who's an officer in that county or whatever, to come follow us and pull us the fuck over. Literally had us sitting in the car for like 2 hours, writing a ticket. I didn't even know, I wasn't even aware at the time, like, what type of danger I was in, but I was in full army uniform. None of that shit fucking mattered. So I'm not interested in people saying, oh, they were a veteran, they was a straight A student. Me and you had a conversation about it. None of that shit fucking matters. I shouldn't have to prop them up as a model citizen for you to care about their life when I start, all you're gonna do is start talking about the other things. You'll bring up, oh, well, like you said, Deshaun, like they had hypertension. You're gonna find some way to justify it any fucking way. So I'm not interested in that. Like someone not being a quote unquote model citizen has nothing to do with their life not being worth it. Like I get very irritated by that. Like that whole conversation. Because I watch it happen over and over again. Like they did the same thing with Mike Brown. They did the same exact thing. They did the same thing with Trayvon Martin.
It's immediate. We saw that with the people. There were 170 plus people arrested the same night that the 2 AUC students were arrested.
And it's been 600 across the country so far.
Keisha came out and dragged all of us, right? But the one thing that she made sure made all of the headline news is that the police officers who harmed the Black college students from the Atlanta University Center were immediately fired.
And it was only those 2, but they were not the only 2 who had beat up on those kids. There was a video I saw today where one of the other ones was out there trying to justify why he deserved that.
And there was another one that pushed a Black protester, like pushed some girl on the ground, and you saw this Black female officer go and get into that officer's ass like she was going off. She was like literally pointing the finger and saying, "Why the fuck would you do that?" Da, 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 da. And people were praising that. I was just like, "But sis, mostly gonna get suspended."
Yep.
Like about none of this shit. I'm not praising no kneeling. I'm not praising no cussing that you doing at your motherfucking peers. I'm not doing none of that. If you don't fucking resign,
take off your badge.
I don't give a fuck about. And even when you do that, I still don't fucking respect you. I don't trust you. But at least I can say you did something more than sit your bum ass in that fucking uniform and allow yourself to pretend like you on our side when you put that motherfucking badge on every fucking day. At least I can say you did more than the rest of these fuck niggas and this motherfucking platoon or whatever the fuck they want to call that shit.
So like, we're gonna look right in the camera and say, "Take off your badge."
Take off your badge. Take off your badge and open your purse.
Take it off.
Like that's all you need to do. And if niggas want to motherfucking beat your ass when you take off your badge, bitch, get your ass, take that shit like a motherfucking G, and then go to fuck home because you deserve that shit.
Because you had the audacity to fucking take a job as an op. Fuck y'all, you the feds.
Like,
well, I ain't gonna talk too much because I am a veteran, but y'all know I don't give a fuck. So I'm gonna like in the line just a little bit.
You have learned, but we still drag for the choices. I tell people all the time, my brother, my best friend on this earth, we should have been twins, is a member of the U.S. Marine Corps. Do I stand for it? Absolutely the fuck not. But I do understand what happens when you have limited opportunity. But at the same time, you better know that who you go to work for every day is who I am fundamentally against. So as long as you don't bring up any allegiance to that shit, you expect me to go along with that shit. We don't really have conversations about his experiences as somebody in the military because that's not what I'm interested in. It just is what it is. And I think we have to stop normalizing that shit. When folks say, I'm gonna just take a job as a police officer or any sort of law enforcement, whether you are enforcing the way the U.S. pillages and plunders the rest of the world and polices the rest of the world via the military, or you out here policing a fucking train station, or Atlanta got more police precincts than is just necessary. I mean, we have police for the parks. Like there are literally privatized police officers that just patrol 4 blocks in downtown to make sure basically homeless people don't be in the park. I mean, and it's a full-on police force. So
and costing the city a shit ton of fucking money.
Well, actually, no, it's funded by the same Chamber of Commerce folks that Keisha Taps dances for. Because in Atlanta, we have a public-private policing partnership. Atlanta has a whole police foundation that sits here and funds supposed to be affordable housing typically for police officers. They sit here and they fund youth centers and shit, and they paint it as something cute. But what happens is when somebody from that Chamber of Commerce has a shiny development deal that they put in a place downtown or anywhere in this city, you better believe that police foundation and that police department get together and they roll some shit out with it too, and they call it social services. When we ask for a binding community benefits agreement for every major development that displaces Black folks, brown folks, queer folks, and poor folks in this fucking city time after time, the city spits in our faces and says, no, but what they will give us is more police. And what they will give us is programs sponsored by the police. And what they will give us is small scale, low impact programs funded by the same white billionaires who are complicit with the police. But do people in this city critique it? Absolutely not, because we love Arthur Blank for giving us the Falcons.
Well, so as we wrap up, I want to thank everybody for being back in the middle. It was a great discussion. I'm sorry that we had to come back and talk about this. I rather had talked about some other stuff, but this conversation was very, very important. I was talking to Tasia the other night and saying that it's very disappointing to see that the folks who keep calling Atlanta Wakanda are not, they're getting all the attention. But I need some folks who can break down why Atlanta will never be a Wakanda under this type of bullshit. So I appreciate y'all coming and speaking on this shit. It was very, very important. Y'all have anything to say before we end it, honey? Oh yes, we anything that any places that organizations that we need to shout out and donate to and support.
The Bail Fund, baby.
Yes, come on.
So folks should definitely donate to the Atlanta Solidarity Network. That is and has been our bail fund since 2014, since niggas brought together, since Aria Marie brought together, and a bunch of folks brought together 5,000 people in the city. They created that fund, and they've been the go-to ever since. So folks should absolutely donate to them. And also, TPR, the People's Response Atlanta, just released a 10-step way that folks can get involved. So if they go to the peoplesresponseatl.com, they can see all 10 of those things that they can do. There's a bunch of steps of how they can get involved. I also tweeted it out. So if you are on social media, go on Twitter and look up the hashtag, the People's Response ATL, and it's there as well. There's a lot of things that people can do. I work for it. SNAP Code, Solutions Not Punishment Collaborative, and we are doing a lot of work right now. All the things, a lot of ways for folks to get involved.
And I work with the Justice for All Coalition, which is Atlanta's frontline resourcing network for all of our folks on the street. We do direct outreach to through a harm reduction lens, which means we do direct outreach to the nittiest of the gritty, typically IV drug users, people who are living at the intersection of homelessness, sex work, maybe even, HIV, Hep B. We do testing, we do resources, hygiene kits. We always need things. We're getting ready to roll out a tent drive. And so we'll have a way for folks to, one, donate us money, two, buy us, tents and have them shipped here, buy sleeping bags, have them sent here. If you're local, if you're in Atlanta, you can plug in with us. We will come pick up your donations because we know folks buy tents, go camping once, say it's for the birds, and then the tent's in the house. There's a person living on the streets that needs shelter. Right. So we're collecting that, and we've been continuing to do this outreach ever since the beginning of COVID-19, but J4AC has been serving Atlanta for over 10 years at the helm of the great Marshall Rancifer, who is my, OG. That's my mentor, and I'm a ride for Marshall.
So, yeah. Get into it. So we will make sure to provide all these links below in the comments. Thank y'all so much, and until next time, bye. Gang, 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 gang.
Yeah.